Hey guys, I'm Sagey.
Hey, I'm Bard, and welcome back to the Sagey Bard podcast. Hey guys, today we're going to do something a little bit different. You guys might find this interesting, and we're going to be talking about our ethnicities. If you guys, you may notice that I'm, Black American, and Sagey is
Indian American.
East Indian American. So let's, we're going to be talking about skin color, we're going to be talking about race, we're going to be talking about the interpersonal relationships between Indian Americans and African Americans. And real quick, we're going to start doing lives, okay? So we want you guys to go ahead and subscribe. We want to communicate with you guys so you can reach out to us. Go ahead and subscribe. We're going to start doing some lives. You might start doing one today. Obviously, you're not going to see this until Tuesday, but just to let you know. So we might start doing lives starting today on Sundays. So, let us know in the comments what you think about the podcast. Just kind of give us some feedback. We're going to, be a little bit more casual. And if you notice, I'm wearing a t-shirt here.
Unity.
It says Unity, okay? I wore it today for this episode, all right? So,
well, it's perfect for a country.
Perfect for a country. It's what we need. We need more of this. So just kind of talking about Indian and African American. One of the things that I've noticed is that we, obviously we have a skin color similarity. A lot of our skin colors are very similar, if not the same in some respects. I've met members of your family, and I was, I'll give you my live reaction right now. I was pretty shocked that everyone didn't look like you, didn't have the same skin color as you. I was actually shocked that there were people who were, darker skinned, because I just assumed, in my ignorance, I just assumed that if you're this color, most of your family might be around the same color as you. And I was actually pretty shocked. And I thought it was pretty cool that you had people in your family who were comparable to what I would see in African Americans or Black Africans in terms of skin color.
There is totally a huge range of skin colors. I mean, I think whether it's the Black community or the Indian community, my dad's quite a bit lighter than I am.
Yeah, it was light, yeah.
But when you look at skin color, I'll tell you, I think that many of the darkest people I've ever met were Indian people. And there's only one Black person I've ever met that was darker than the darkest Indian person I've ever seen.
The darkest person I've ever met or seen was from, I think it was two guys I met in the Stater Brothers from Senegal.
Okay.
Those guys, well, not even that side. Hold on, let me get this right. That, they were that. I couldn't believe it. Like, it honestly changed how I viewed Black people. And because I was in my 20s at the time, I believe. And when I saw these guys, I realized for the first time, oh, this is why they call us Black. Because if you look at my shirt, look at my skin, I'm brown. And I remember I had, but I go by the title Black. We don't use brown because brown's taken by Hispanics. Some Hispanics will call themselves brown. And then some Indians also, from what I understand, will refer to themselves as brown as well. Is that right?
Yeah.
No? You're brown. So, one of the things it sort of shifted my understanding of what Black is when I saw these guys from Senegal, because I asked them, I was like, hey, where are you guys from? I knew they weren't African American because they were so Black. And that's what so I started to form an understanding. When you grow up Black in America, you're separated from Africa. You don't know, you just kind of think what you are, this is what Black people are. So you don't understand what Africans look like until you start to see them from different countries, and you're like, what?
Growing up in California, Florida, and New York, different places, did you ever identify with African people? I mean, because...
No, we never, there's always a distinction. We're African American, you're African.
So what do you prefer? I mean, this is moving to something slightly different, but it's always fascinated me because some people want to be called black, some people want to be called African Americans. What do you prefer? Like, I mean, what would be...
I go by either. I don't get caught up in the titles and stuff like that. I don't really care. You can call me black, you can call me African American. Just don't call me colored. Or unless you're a South African. Yeah. I understand that South Africans use that term colored. So I understand that they're using it from a place of that's what they have, right? Don't call me colored if you're here in America, especially if you're, especially if you're white American. Do not call me colored.
Has anyone ever tried calling you that?
No. That's more of a...
older term,
older, Southern, but it's used in a derogatory sense,
correct,
right?
So I'm guessing you would not like to be referred to as boy?
Boy, not that either. I prefer non-binary. Actually, but no, in all seriousness, and obviously I don't want to be called Negro either, because I think it's just the way it just has especially by a white American.
Yeah.
Nothing against white Americans. I love white Americans. I love all people, but.
Well, you know that they're intentionally being derogatory at that point.
Right. It doesn't have a good connotation when it's coming from a certain group of people. It's like people asking you about, overly inquisitive about watermelon and fried chicken. And I eat watermelon, so does everyone else, but it's got a negative stereotype to it. Like we just mowing down watermelon next.
I mowed down about 3 pounds yesterday.
I guess you're black now. But in all seriousness,
well, based on skin color, you often can't tell the difference between an Indian or a black person.
And we're going to get into that because that's a really interesting. I know we're sort of free flowing. We do have some questions. We have a lot of things that we want to talk about, and we think this is going to be a really interesting episode for you guys. It's interesting for us. It's a time for us to learn. I want to learn more about. I'm curious about Indian culture, Indian people. I have family who are half Indian, and you have family as well who are half African American.
Or fully.
Or fully. So, so it's really interesting. Just the whole skin connection. It just kind of, kind of off script here. When I went to my first time going to Thailand, I was blown away because I didn't know there were brown people in Asia besides Indians. I didn't know that. And then it really made me wonder about the U.S. immigration system. It made me really wonder. I was like, why don't we see these people here? Why are the Thai people that we see here, why do they tend to look a certain skin color? And why don't we see these other people? Is it that they don't want to come to the United States? That's totally possible. But when you go to, anyway, this isn't about Thai politics and racial politics, but just something to think about. Anyway.
Well, you actually have a lot of really brown people in Thailand, Cambodia, Malaysia, Vietnam. There's some, or even Laos. There's some pretty brown people over in those places.
Yeah, and if you guys ever go to Thailand, go down to the south. Thailand's beautiful. Beautiful people, all ranges of skin colors, from pretty fair to the artificially bleached. All the way, and that happens in black countries too. It's happening in the country where my parents are from. My parents are from Jamaica. Happens there, happens in Africa.
Are you talking about the skin bleaching?
Skin bleaching happens in India. It's a big market, where they prey on people of color. But not to divert the conversation too far away, they also prey on themselves because there's a tanning industry and a fake tan industry I remember going on a date with a white girl, beautiful white woman. she actually knew, well, anyway, went on a date, found out after the date, she was kind of tan. I was like, whoa, you're pretty tan. You been out in the sun? No, tanning cream. She had put on tanning cream. So insecurities are placed in both groups. No matter what your skin tone, capitalism is going to win.
Well, you always want what you don't have.
You always want what you don't have. And it's just fascinating.
If you're light, you want to be dark. If you're dark, you want to be light.
It's fascinating. So where were we? We were talking about skin color, Indians. Oh, Asia, back to Asia, Thailand. In Thailand, I noticed down in the south, when I went to Phi Phi Island, Koh Phi Phi, Koh means island. Beautiful place. Guys, if you haven't been in Thailand, go. I went there for initially for school. My options were, I was looking at going to, I taught English overseas for years. I was supposed to do it for 2 years and then come back and do my MBA in finance. I already got accepted to the university. You know which university I'm talking about. We won't mention it here. But I got accepted, MBA finance. I was supposed to come back. Then I actually met someone overseas, so I ended up staying a long time. And I actually liked it. Overseas was fascinating. I like to study. I like to expand my mind. And I learned a lot overseas. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about African America, how we're perceived. But so I was doing a TESOL course in Phuket, Thailand. And I noticed all these beautiful brown people. And I was like, this is insane. And what was even crazier, I was in a supermarket called Tesco.
Yep.
Tesco is a British, it's like, what would you compare it to out here? You know, like, what's comparable? Like a super Walmart?
Yeah.
It's got everything in it. Tesco, they'll sell TVs.
It's a little smaller, but.
A little smaller, yeah, like a small super Walmart. So
Maybe
I'm in
super Walmart.
a super Walmart, but a small version, not a really big one. So I'm in Tesco, and I see a woman. I remember walking around the corner. I'm imagining it right now. Walking around the corner, and I see a woman walking, pushing her cart, looking around at the items. She looks exactly like one of my aunts. I couldn't believe it. When I got back to where my family lives, I told all my aunts and uncles and my mom and my family. I was like, I saw a woman that looked exactly like you, and it freaked me out when I saw her. I was like, whoa, she looked exactly like my aunt, but she was Thai. So when I told them, they started laughing, but they were laughing extra hard. So I was like, why are you guys laughing so much? There must be something deeper. So I asked, and my uncle told me, he was like, we used to tease her and say she looked like she was Asian when she was younger.
You know.
Crazy. So I'll give you a few more details about my family. My brother one of my brothers looks very Horn of Africa, maybe Somalian. He's got that look. The Somalians, the East Africans, he's had this happen to him several times. They think he's from Somalia. And this happened to him here in California when he was in grad school. Family looks different. People, some people are different. But the common denominator, the common thing is the skin tone, And so anyway, when it comes to getting comments on that, or we can just move on? We're just going to keep it real fluid and real organic here.
Well, no, I mean, I have cousins that are kind of all over the board in terms of how they look, but I had one cousin who, I guess somewhere along the lines, maybe we had, or he had a relative from Burma or Southeast Asia, and we used to actually call him Chinky. That was his nickname growing up.
Which is not a nice term.
And we didn't even think about it. It was just, his nickname was Chinky.
Right. Which, obviously, that term is...
Well, it's racist here.
It's a considered racist term. Yeah, a lot of people didn't know that until Asians started to say stuff. And, we don't endorse that term, but we're just letting you know what...
Well, and we used to call him that because his eyes look different than ours,
Interesting. All right, so let's get into it a little bit. My first line of, I guess, questioning was, how does the caste system in India, Indians when they come to America, and my parents are immigrants too, right? Jamaica. And for any African Americans who are watching this, who are foundational Black American or who've been here since for 400 plus years, I've compared my DNA with an African American whose family's been here for a minute in Virginia. We come from the same African countries.
Okay.
So the slave trade, people were taken from the same places, guys. So Jamaicans and people in the Caribbean and people in Brazil, we're all cousins. We're all the same people. All the Black people in the Americas are from the same places, typically. Brazilians may have a little bit of more East African. Sometimes they have some more East African blood. I've seen that on some of their DNA. But if you're African American, you're most likely going to have you're going to have Nigerian. A lot of African Americans are Nigerian. And I've talked to, anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. We'll get into that later. But so we had a different stop off the boat in Jamaica. You were saying about your cousins, and so the caste system. How does that, so when Indians come over here, when they immigrate to the United States, when anyone immigrates, they bring a subset of ideas and culture and things with them, right? Everything's not just a race. They're bringing their lexicon, their language, their ideas. They, unfortunately, sometimes they'll bring their racism. That's happened. Black people, I don't know if people realize this. People think we're perfect sometimes. Well, not perfect, but maybe that we don't have race. But yeah, we some Black people are racist too, right? But when Indians, how do they view black people when it comes to the caste system, using that as a veneer, as a layer of...
It would be hard for me to talk about the caste just because I didn't grow up Hindu.
You didn't grow up in it, yeah.
So I think one of the things that my parents were really conscious of is never allowing you to look at people based on their skin color. And maybe that's because both of my parents are completely different skin colors. But if you're saying how that pertains to Indian attitudes towards Black people in America, then the perception, at least growing up, was not a very good one. And it had a lot to do, I think, with perceived work ethics or the differences between the communities.
Okay. Now, African Americans have had a rough history. They've literally had, and Jamaicans as well. Jamaicans had, to be honest, I don't know much about the Jamaican part of slavery, and so I've just, because my family doesn't talk about it. It's not something we talk about. And I don't know if that's because Jamaica's liberated, it's independent, it's an African-based Black country with other people living there. There's Indians living in Jamaica, there's Chinese, there's white people. But Jamaicans, Black Jamaicans being the majority in number and in power. Once you have a country, you don't necessarily need to talk about race as much. I've noticed that with Jamaicans. When they come to America, they mainly just ignore racist and racism. They don't, it's like they don't really talk. My dad used to talk about racism. I think he experienced some when he was here in the States. My dad's passed on, but I think he experienced, he thinks he experienced, or he's pretty sure he experienced it like in the 70s and maybe in the 80s from some people. But I personally think he experienced maybe some sort of xenophobia, and because, he had an accent.
Well, I think that
man with an accent.
I think it's also different with like American Black people and Jamaicans, because I think that Jamaicans tend to, at least from my experience, they tend to have an identity that they're oftentimes very proud of.
Yeah.
And that is kind of different a lot of times than American Blacks.
Yeah. And I want to say this to my fellow Black Americans here in the country. We are, this is a very sensitive topic, and I don't want you to feel upset at this. I don't want you to get upset at Sagey or I when we're talking about this. This is just information, okay? I think a lot of my people, African Americans, I'm African American, but I'm on a different branch of the tree. Mm-hmm. I've started on a different branch. My parents are immigrants, so it's different for me than, we speak differently because we don't have that base, the same language so we're different, but I accept my identity as an African American. And I love African American people, and I want to show you guys, I want to show you some stuff, foundational Black Americans, just over time.
But you know what I've found really interesting? Like, I don't think that the Black community in America is monolithic, but it's treated that way.
Right.
And one of the things that I find really kind of unusual is Black people in America espousing and supporting Kamala Harris, because she doesn't really represent them. She's Jamaican Black
she's
and
Jamaican.
Indian.
Yeah.
So then she doesn't really have the same experience as a Black person here whose family was an American slave, or something like that. And it almost seems like, despite whatever idiotic statement or utterance that she's trying to make, that a lot of the Black community continues to rally behind someone who's virtually incoherent. And it's because they say she's Black, but for all intents and purposes, for most of her life, she did not identify as Black until it was advantageous for her when she was applying to law school or to graduate programs or whatever she was doing.
All right, that's a great point. Let me explain some of that, and let's make sure we take a look at this.
Sure.
You can put yours up on the table. We can't see it. Like we said, guys, we're keeping this casual today. We're not as scripted, but we're just gonna have an honest conversation. There's two camps when it comes to Black people whose parents come from overseas. Two camps. And I'm explaining this because I think this is really important for African Americans to understand. The upbringing of some Black people is such that it just makes us different from virtue of having that Caribbean ancestry. We're just different. But being raised here in the States, the closest approximation that we have is Black American. White people and other people can't tell us apart. And honestly, we're cousins. We come from the same places in Africa. We're cousins. And some of us are even related. And DNA is going to find that out really soon. So with Kamala, though, and then some African Americans, so some people who have a Caribbean background they see the differences between Black American and themselves. So they're more Black American adjacent. They have I have Black American friends, but there are some things that I don't understand about Black American culture because I wasn't raised. I went to Black church. My parents took us to Black church. So we got that experience. We were around Black African Americans. But sometimes we don't feel like we fit all the way in, though, sometimes. Some of us, and I'm one of them. I don't feel like I fit all the way in, but I'm Black adjacent. So I like, for instance, you guys hear me speaking right now. I don't have a strong, maybe some people might think I do, some people don't. I don't think I have a strong, what's considered Black American dialect. Okay? I don't think I do. It may be there somewhat, but keep in mind, my parents don't have a Black American dialect. So some of that language in the home is going to be different, and it's going to affect how we speak. Okay, so there's that difference. Then you have people like Jay-Z or KRS-One. These are rappers, obviously. KRS-One. KRS-One and Jay-Z both have Caribbean ancestry, but I think they're mixed. I think one of their parents might be Black American, right? So maybe they got a little bit more, but so there are people like that. So it's going to vary. And then you have African Americans who they grow up also, and they may grow up with a different language at home, definitely a different culture. So it's going to be different. So, and then what complicates the things with Kamala Harris, she's biracial on top of that. So I gave you mine. I'm not biracial. I have a multiracial background, like how most African Americans do. The average African American is only 80% African, according to some research done by an African American lawyer. I think he's out of South Carolina. So when you look at Kamala Harris, and I don't really want to get into the politics of it, but she's half Indian. And if you were to look at her DNA, I can guarantee you her black parent is not 100% black, 100% African. Her Indian parent, I can pretty much guarantee you, is going to be 100% Indian.
Yes.
Or 100% Asian. So, truthfully, just by the math, she's more Asian than she is black. When I see her, I see a little bit of African features in her, but I do see strong Asian genes as well. So, she's more Asian. So, she's yours.
No, keep her, please.
Technically, she's yours, so you guys can have her.
Well played.
Yeah. I just have to look at the math. I like science, guys. I don't go by feelings. Feelings is not. It's not science.
That was a good way of throwing her back on our side.
You can have her. Okay. All right. So back to the caste system. So Indians can be same color, darker than some Africans. Same dark, same light, but some Indians are pretty light. But some African Americans are pretty light too.
Correct. I mean, within Hinduism, it divides itself up in a lot of different ways. I mean, it's not only skin color, but it's also on where you were born within a religious caste, and that is something that you can't change. Gotcha. You might have a priestly class, and those people are always going to have certain rights. Then you have a warrior class. You have the lowest class, which is untouchables, and those people would traditionally, I think they would work on shoes, or they would clean latrines or toilets. And there's no way of escaping that, because within the Hindu idea of, generally speaking, of reincarnation, as I understand it, you're born at a certain place based on what you did in your prior life. And
it's not your fault.
It's not your fault. Well, it is your fault because it's how you lived another life. And based on how good or bad you were in that life, you will move up a level or move down a level. So that is always it's always a problem. You can't escape it. You have to be as good as you can be in this life so that you can move up another level, or maybe you can skip some if you're really enlightened or perfect,
Gotcha.
But if you're a bad human being, then you might be reincarnated as a dog or a untouchable or something. I don't understand enough about it, but
so is the caste system related to skin color in India?
No.
Oh, it's not. So a lighter skinned Indian could be in a lower caste.
Yeah.
Interesting. How does one know they're in a lower caste though? So it's just by job? How does one identify it?
I wouldn't know.
That's weird. Okay,
but the people I do know that are higher caste, they make sure to tell you.
How do they know? Is it by their job?
Probably because their parents told them. Or it's like community checks and balances.
So would you say it's just social economics at play through a different lens?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Which always makes me wonder what happens if you just move to another village and
you get a reset?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm a higher class. Just write that down.
Exactly.
Okay. All right, so caste system explained. All right, so let's get into all right, now, you mentioned something, and I think a lot of African Americans are going to want to hear this. And I think it's important we hear this, okay? Because I believe that as a people, we should be able to take some sort of criticism and grow. I think the word is growth. We have to understand, and this is, I'll be honest, it's embarrassing. I'm going to say that. It's embarrassing. I'm going to be very raw, emotional, organic. It is sort of embarrassing. Sometimes when I see, like I was watching a show called, I'm not going to announce it here, but they were showing a clip of some black kids ransacking a Gucci store.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't want to get into that too much in terms of race and crime and stuff like that, but when I went overseas, there is I'm going to say this, guys, there's a negative perception of who we are until they talk to you. And I think what people see on camera precedes us, and it causes discrimination, let's just be honest. And it's not a positive discrimination like we're going to talk about today.
It's kind of like when you're looking at Jerry Springer in his heyday. Everyone had this idea that the United States was full of a bunch of people that were like beating each other up on stage and yelling at each other and living in trailer parks.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, you know, with a lot of the images of whether it's a Gucci shop that's getting robbed or a bodega owner that's trying to defend his life, you know, in New York, that the people perpetrating this crime are from a certain group.
Right. And you got to be really, and I understand you have to hedge on this because you're not being, and I hate that this has to happen, but I'm going to ask Sagey to just defend him, just be very gentle. Let me do the heavy lifting. Yeah. But the perception is what you're saying. Go back to that. I'm sorry. The perception.
So then the perception is that this is how this group wants to or does things.
Right.
And it makes other people who look at it say, okay, well, I'm really afraid of them. I mean, and that may be incorrect, but when you look at, I mean, what is observed, it's easy to come to that conclusion.
Let me jump in here real quick. And I want to thank you for being very frank and honest. You mentioned fear and being afraid. And I'm going to look at the camera for this. If you're African American, I want you to think about this. Think deep down, just be honest with yourself. When you go to certain communities, black communities, that have a reputation for being dangerous, tell me you're not afraid too. Tell me you're not afraid. I mean, African Americans are also afraid of some African American people. And if you're being honest with yourself, you'll admit to this. You don't have to admit to it publicly, but you can admit that, and I've heard other African American people talk about this, and the reason why we keep quiet is because it is embarrassing. It's just a simple fact. It's embarrassing. I'm afraid of certain communities because we know, African Americans, we know who the dangerous people are in our communities. We know them. We call them Pookies and Ray Rays. Okay? And I know this conversation, some people may feel like it's not supposed to happen in mixed company meaning outside of the African American circle, but the truth is the world can see. It's being laid bare for the world to see. And I think it's more, what's the word I'm looking for? It's more highlighted or magnified when you get into Black American urban culture, hip hop, rap music. You begin to see the danger You see it. You see the guns. You see people looking at the camera, holding the gun sideways and making threats and referring to each other as N-words. And you see it. And I'm going to get back to that. I'm going to get back to why I think that is. And then we're going to move on to another subject. But go ahead. What do you think about this?
Well, I think it's really, it's very sad. Because when you look at where things have gone over the, let's say, the last 50 years, I think they've gotten worse in a lot of ways. I think they got better to a certain degree, and we're taking steps backwards. I personally believe that the N-word should be banned in any rap video. I mean, I don't think it should be ever even allowed on the radio, right. Because there are certain terms that they have no use. They have no positive use other than maybe in an academic setting.
Right. Kind of explaining it.
To teach why you should never use some terms. Like these things need to be retired.
Right.
From the lexicon entirely.
Right. I've done a little bit of research, just real quick. I didn't know we were going to go to the N-word. I brought it up. But the N-word wasn't specifically used just on black people or Africans. There are instances. I heard a Filipino woman stating in a video that American troops were calling Filipinos N-words at one point. And I know in Australia, the black populace there, the black indigenous were also referred to as N-words. And I heard the kids down in New Zealand and Australia refer to themselves as N-words, as do some African Americans. And if I can remember correctly, Indians were also referred to as the N-word at one point by the Brits.
Well, basically depending on the language, I think it's either Spanish or Portuguese. When you say negro or negro, it just is a word for black. So it would be the same as saying a black person.
Right, but it was used in a derogatory sense.
And in the United States, it's taken on a whole different meaning.
Right.
So someone might use it in another part of the world without it being the loaded term that it is in the United States.
Right. And the thing is, let me state this. Because...
But when a rapper is using it, they're using it in that as a loaded term, I think.
Rappers, here's the thing. I've done a lot of research on this and reading into this and thought about the last 5 years I've really dug into this. A lot of black people view the N-word as a term of endearment. Okay? I have examples of black people using the N-word as a term of attack and hate against other black people. Just think black people, think about this. When have you heard black people use the N-word when they're angry with another black person and use it the same way a white racist would use it, in a weaponized form? So it can't, just like matter, it can't exist matter can't exist in the same place at the same time. It just doesn't make any sense. And the laws of physics declare that shouldn't happen, right? You can't have something be an insult and a term of endearment used by the same person in the same day against themselves. It can't exist the same place at the same time and make sense to the rest of the world. When you attempt to do things like that, you look foolish. And so anyway, let's go ahead and let's pivot. Let's move on. Let's get past this. But let me just say this: if you want to refer to yourself as an N-word, feel free. Have at it. I'll refer to you as a self-professed N-word. So you can call yourself that in your family and your friends if you want to. I'm not going to complain, but I don't want it in my music, on the airways. I don't want to hear it. Keep your ignorance over there. All right.
Well, that's the thing. I think that it's okay for you to maybe say they can refer to themselves that way, but I don't even think it's okay for them to refer to themselves that way. I mean, and I'm looking at it as someone outside of that community. Strictly from an American point of view, this word needs to die. Like, it needs to be dead to all.
Right.
It's not something where you can say, you know what, it's okay because you're African or a black American, it's okay for you to use this. It's not okay.
Yeah, I think it's damaging.
And it's like what you said, you can't have like this matter exist in in two places in the same way. It is negative. It needs to die.
Yeah, I agree. Let's maybe we'll get into this a little bit later. It's a very sensitive topic. Once again, look at this in the academic sense. Don't be offended. Okay, just look at this in an academic sense. Let's pivot. So, the image that, and guys, let me say this. This image that some Indian Americans may have, it's a self-inflicted wound. Guys, this is something that we created this image and we portrayed it on camera for the world to see through our music. Now, there's an argument that there are other people who are controlling the music industry, and that's true. But no one is putting a gun to a rapper's head and telling them to do it this way. And a lot of rappers now have their own record companies anyway. So, but I do know that this was a profit center for some people who are non-black. I get that. And I don't want to mention those people because there's a lot of controversy around that. And that's how you get canceled, right? Because we have free speech in America. So I'm going to leave that alone. But if you know someone's weaponizing the word against you and in your music against your culture, why are you going to say it? What's wrong with you? Are you stupid? And this is what I don't understand. So, and I really do think a lot of these people are stupid, to be honest. But we'll leave it at that. It's brainwashing. So Africans and some Caribbean people also have a negative view of African Americans. It's not just Indians. It's people around the world. Is it,
Here's the thing, though. I do think there's a little bit of a problem. You said self-inflicted. I don't know if it's entirely self-inflicted. I think that it's something that has also happened to the American black community. And again, I'm not going to buy into the whole we're victims and always perpetual victims. No, black people have the same talents and a lot of the same opportunities. A lot of those situations are better now than they were 60 years ago.
Right.
But when we're saying self-inflicted, I think that they're not entirely all self-inflicted. I think that they are governmental policy decisions that have led to poorer performance by black Americans. And this is where I'm a disciple of Thomas Sowell and the way he views this, because what a lot of the things that the black community have taken on, and they say, well, this is black culture and we need to kind of defend it. It's not black culture. It's actually some kind of Scotch-Irish culture that really doesn't exist outside of some backwater places in the South.
And let me make a couple comments on that. I agree. The self-inflicted part is where we take the abuse that was once handed to us in terms of the racial slurs, the discrimination, a lot of the wounds that were given to us, and then we perpetuate it on ourselves. That's the self-inflicted part. So it's like someone starts the engine to a torture device, and we have the ability to turn the engine off, but instead of doing that, we step on the gas and we keep it going. That's the self-inflicted part. We didn't turn it on, they did, but we continue it. But the community is divided. Not all African Americans like this word. A lot of people want to get rid of it, but there's some people who want to keep it. So there's an argument about this. You can see there's a lot of debates online. You guys can watch that on your own. But I agree with you. It's not all self-inflicted. There was an initial starter, and then unfortunately we're continuing it, and we're spreading it all around the world. We're making it cool. We're making the word cool, for some people at least. Now to Thomas Sowell. If you guys are curious, what's the name of the book that he wrote? Was it Black?
I think it was Black Liberals and White. Oh no, Black Rednecks and White Liberals.
Go on YouTube, watch his interviews. Dr. Thomas Sowell, Sowell. Did I say his last name correctly?
Yes.
Sowell. Okay. I like him too. I think he makes a lot of sense. What he does is he's looking at it from a anthropological, sociological perspective, and a linguistic perspective. He investigates the origins of black vernacular, black speech patterns, cadence, and I won't spoil it for you, but he links it back to another group of people who are not black. Keep in mind, being brought to this country from Africa and deliberately mixing tribes that don't speak the same languages, it reset our English, or our language. And we had to start from an infancy. And these black people were not around upper crust white people. They were around a certain group of white people who were less than desirable, even to the white community. And you'll find that, so a lot of times when you think you're speaking like a black person, listen carefully, you sound like other people. But you don't, most black Americans aren't aware of this.
No.
They, in ignorance, they think that, oh, this is how we sound. No, this is not how you sound. You got this from someone else. And you'll figure that out soon enough. Dr. Thomas Sowell, look at his interviews on that topic. Let's move on. Skin similarities and how it's sometimes difficult to tell who is. Now, I've come across, maybe we can put some of these images on screen. Sure. And
well, you have skin similarities. You also have people who identify as, I mean, totally different races than what would normally be expected. But yeah,
right.
And when you look at it, I think the whole point of something like this is, regardless of what your skin color is or your race is, it is absolutely idiotic to base someone strictly on skin color or race. Because they have no control over that. There's no amount of education that's going to change your skin color or your race. That is who you are. And like you said if black people went back, they would find that they're basically from the same places. When we look back at human genetics, we're all still coming from a common ancestor.
Right.
And that is whether you believe in evolution or creation. You're coming back to the same starting point, and we're all related to each other, roughly speaking.
That's true. A lot of people,
family.
Yeah, we're all a family, but some people don't want to admit that part. Yeah. They want to move on to the different colors and stuff, which is fine. So we have to work within that milieu, right?
Yeah.
So let's look at maybe we should play the game right now.
Sure.
All right, we're gonna play a little game. We thought this might be fun. Then we'll put this on the screen for you guys. So you'll see these as we look at them. So the game is gonna be called Let's Play Black or Indian. Very creative, title. So let's get into it. Well, before we get into the game, we're gonna check our time here real quick.
Black or Indian?
Yeah, let's play Black or Indian. So we got about let's see, 7 minutes for this segment. Let's do this segment in 7 minutes. All right, so let's look at number one. Here's number one on the screen.
Yep.
Number one to me, she looks like a black woman. I don't know. I think most black Americans would see her. Most people in America would say she's black. What do you think she is?
I think she's black.
Okay, she's black. Now, what about the skin? Let's talk about the skin. Well, we get into that later.
Yeah.
All right, number two. Let's put number two on the screen. Here's number two. Now, this may be obvious to a lot of people, but I think she's black. What do you think? What does she look like to you? Does she have any features that look?
I think she's probably more black than something else.
But she's definitely not Indian, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. She's what I would call like a typical black American. She's black, but she's probably got some mixed heritage.
Yep.
You can see a little something around her eyes. There's something unique happening here around the eyes. And around,
she looks really pretty.
And around the cheekbone. She's a beautiful woman, yeah. But the hair is a dead giveaway. If her hair was straight and her nose was a little bit different, she could probably even pass for an East Indian. Possibly, but the nose and the hair are definitely a dead giveaway. All right, let's move on to number three. Number three, I think this is dead giveaway too. In America, number 3 would be called black. But I don't know. You grab these slides. What do you think? What's number 3? I may be wrong.
I think she's black.
Yeah, she's black. The hair is a giveaway. I mean, you see the big African hair, but her hair, the texture is different. This is a different texture. And then the skin tone is very indicative of mixed heritage. She may not be she may not be biracial. She could be biracial, but she's definitely not 100% African. Or maybe she is, who knows? She could be from East Africa, but she's definitely not Indian. I mean, I think this is an easy game because...
Well, she might look like she's like Ethiopian or...
Right.
Yeah.
For sure. Maybe Horn of Africa.
Yep.
And some of those people are mixed anyway. All right, let's move on to number 4. All right, put number 4 on the screen. Definitely a beautiful woman. I don't know her name. She looks like an actress. Is she an actress?
I have no idea who she is.
Okay, we just pull these up, guys. We don't really know. But I know for a fact that she's multiracial at some level. She's not 100% black, but in America she'd be called black. What do you think about her? Does she look at all Indian to you?
She could be like Arab, maybe.
Maybe Arab. Okay, you think she looks Arab? Most African Americans would just look at her and say she's black. Yeah. But if we want to look at the numbers, if we want to be honest, she's multiracial. We need to start using the correct terms because a lot of us aren't pure black, but we don't know that. Because we don't have Africans to look at to compare ourselves to.
Yeah.
But once you start getting around Africans, then you start to realize how, and when you do your ancestry, I don't work for them, do your 23andMe, you'll start to see that you're not as pure black as you think you are. Number 5, he's pulled her up. Now, I don't know what all Indians look like, but to me, I'm definitely saying Southeast Asian somewhere.
Yeah.
She could be definitely India, 100%.
Pakistani, Bangladeshi.
Somewhere in there. I'm thinking, I've seen people like this. She could even pass for
Dominican.
You got people who are in the Caribbean who may look like this, but then again, you have Indian blood out there as well. She's definitely not black, but you've got some mixed race people who look like this. That's what's interesting. You got, once you start mixing races, you can sort of come up with people that look very similar to this. But is she Indian?
I believe so.
Okay, so she's Indian. All right, let's go to number 6. Now, number 6 is interesting because of skin color.
Yeah.
Now, in America, would you say most Indians... Okay, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to say...
Number 6 is the darkest of all of the people we've seen so far.
She's the darkest. Okay. Yeah. Now, number 6, I would say a lot of her darkness, because I'm looking at her hand versus her face, I would say a lot of her darkness either comes from sun or makeup or a mix. Because her hand here...
That's just because the light is on it.
Yeah, this looks... Yeah, true. Maybe there's shade. So this is her face without any light. Now, I have a cousin who's half Indian and half black, and she's sort of close to number 3 in color, skin color.
Got it.
But this woman is... I would say she's either mixed race, like maybe like a Trinidad Tobago, maybe half like a coolie, what they call coolies, Indian and black mixed. What is she? What would you say she is?
She's Indian.
Oh, she's Indian?
She's Indian.
What part of India would you say she's from?
I'd probably say South India.
South India? Okay. So, okay. So
these ones were kind of easy.
These are easy, but number 6 is where, we sort of gradually moved into it. But I would say number 6 is very interesting because you have a lot of mixed people that look like this.
Well, I think the important thing to look at over here is that the darkest person here is Indian. Okay, on this, that we're looking at.
Right.
So then,
let's put up. We're going to put up a shot. A lot of, obviously, you can't see what we're looking at, but we're going to put up a shot of everyone now, so we can compare and contrast. So,
but when we're looking at skin color between black people and Indian people, there's no difference.
Right.
I mean, like, they're exactly the same.
And I think that's the important thing that we're highlighting. There's really no difference. Like if you look at number 1 and then you look at number 6, she's black.
But she's lighter, way lighter.
She's lighter, but I can look around her eyes and I can tell she's got a little European blood, right? I can see it, but she's mostly black. You may not be able to understand this, but I can see as an African American that she's got a little European, and then her skin tone, the sort of the lightness to her skin tone, that's not typical. I wouldn't say that's typical in Africa with Africans, but
Americans.
But not in, I wouldn't say this is typical with Africans who are West African. But then again, I don't really know them completely as well either. I've met a lot of them. But she's what we would consider black in America. But, all right, guys, we'll be right back with our game. Let's play Black or Indian.
Okay, well, everyone, we are back with everyone's favorite game, Black or Indian.
All right, cool. All right. All right, so maybe
we've had some easy ones. It's going to get more complex.
All right, maybe it's not everyone's favorite game, but we like it. It's our favorite game. We hope you like it too. Anyway, guys, I want to ask you to like and subscribe. It's going to help out with the channel, help out with the algorithm. We got a lot of great shows coming your way. We're going to actually get into, let's do a little quick commercial. There's actually a couple things that you want to get into in terms of finance.
What I really want to get into is some really practical things. I know we've talked about a bunch of random things, but both of us, Bart and I, like business. And there are different things that we would like to share with you to help you with your business in terms of business credit, obtaining different things that would facilitate whatever you're doing and the reasons for it. So even though I taught business for a long time, business classes, I still did not know all of the differences between business credit and personal credit as they pertain to credit cards. And I think that those are really interesting things to share with you, because that is not information that is shared in a classroom.
And I've had some experience with developing a product, prototyping, and going through that process, and I can share some stuff with you guys on that if you're interested. I understand a little bit of the marketing side too. I understand the pay for play when it comes to, I've had one of the members of the original Shark Tank team reach out to me on my business email about selling me a spot on TV.
Oh, wow.
And I know how much it costs. I know what opportunities are out there. So I understand a little bit of it, and I could kind of help out with some of that too if you guys are interested. All right, we're gonna put number 7 up now. Number 7 is obviously, in my opinion, just looking at the nose and the features, I'm gonna say she's South Asian. I'm gonna say,
yeah.
I don't necessarily know all the Indian features. In my opinion, she doesn't look Indian. She looks like she might be somewhere in that region.
Yeah.
What do you think?
She looks Indian to me.
She looks Indian? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm obviously not an expert on all ethnicities, but I find it interesting, looking at different people. But on another note, would you consider her an attractive woman? Is she considered attractive in your culture?
I think she would be.
Okay. All right, so she's Indian. All right. Now, to be honest, looking at her, she could pass for Hispanic too. There are people.
Yeah, she could be. She could pass for Hispanic.
There are people. I know this is Black or Indian, but some of her features look like she could be mixed with like native, some indigenous Indian mixed with Spaniard and some other things. Yep. There's a little bit of that. There's that. So I don't know. What do you think?
I think she looks Indian to me. But
to you? Okay.
Yeah, she could pass for Hispanic. There's sometimes, actually, there's more than a few times I've met Indian people who I assumed they were Indian, and they turned out to be Hispanic. But I've also met Hispanic women that I thought were Middle Eastern, and they turned out that they were just Hispanic. You know, so
See, you never know.
you don't.
The more you know. There's a little rainbow. All right, number 8. Let's take a look at number 8. We're going to put number 8 up on the screen.
Yep.
Number 8, in my opinion. Now,
Her features are different, but she looks pretty Indian.
I was going to say black, but mixed heritage, maybe biracial. One of the things I look at is hair.
Yeah, the
I'm looking at
of her
the
hair.
texture of the hair. The nose looks European, or I know some Indians have noses like that as well. You guys have some of the features that are common in some European people. And some Europeans, not all Europeans have the same noses. But she looks black, but mixed. What is she? Do you know?
I think she's Indian.
You think she's Indian? Really? Number 8. All right, guys, let us know what you think in the comments. We have come to a stalemate here. I actually want to know who she is. Do you have her file? Could you find her if you looked on your phone? If you looked on your phone, do you think you could find her? Probably not?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I honestly don't know. I'm going to go with mixed. We might have to do a follow-up show to this. All right, so number 8 is mixed. All right, number 9 was interesting. Let's put number 9 up on the screen and put it up on the screen. You guys take a look. We have real Rihanna and we have Indian Rihanna. But tell me real quick, what's the history of, you said there's a history of Africans in India. Give me a little bit of history on that.
The first Africans that were taken to India, at least that we have any documented history of, was in the 7th century. There were a lot of Arab traders who started bringing African slaves to India. And so you have a fairly, you have an Afro-Indian population that's spread out almost over the entire country.
Really? Did not know that.
And so it becomes really hard to differentiate because you have some members of this community who've basically married within their own community and they've preserved their features, but you also have a lot of Indians that have other African features or hair that you might not otherwise expect in India.
Here's what I'm going to say about this, number 9, and I think a lot of African American people might agree with me. A lot of black people might agree. The forehead, the nose, the facial structure looks African. Yeah, she might be from India, but I would say if she were to do her DNA, we would probably find some African. Because she just doesn't look, she looks African to me. But what do I know? I can't see her DNA, so I can't really pin it down. I would have to see her hair. I'd have to look at more pictures, but even the hair sometimes can be deceiving because you've got Brazilians, for instance, who have, or let's look at Ethiopians. Some of them they'll look African, but then their hair will be totally different.
Yep.
All right, let's move on. Let's go to number 10. All right, put number 10 up on the screen. Now, this is interesting because we talked about this. This is a dead giveaway to me. This is a dead giveaway. This is a black child. But what do you think? What do you think she looks like phenotypically? Just her face and her hair.
I think she looks black, but with that little mark on her, she is probably Indian.
So you think that she's probably got a little Indian blood too, maybe? Okay, so this is interesting because based on the history that you just shared with us about, African slaves being brought to India.
And most of them have a Bantu ethnic background.
And if you guys aren't familiar with Bantu, Bantu is if you're West African, if you're here in America, if you're black and you're here in America, you're most likely Bantu. There are some other groups further down south, Khoisan, there's the Nilotic people, East Africa. They're in Rwanda, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Somalia. They look different, very narrow faces. But this is fascinating. do your DNA, guys. You guys, this is a fascinating journey through humanity, you know, and I want you to do your DNA too. I want to, maybe we should have a follow-up. We'll do a follow-up. We'll show our DNA. All right, let's go to number 11. We got number 11. Number 11 up on the screen.
If I was just looking at her, I would think that she was a little black child.
Yeah, me too. Little black child. But at the same time, there is something unique in her face. There's something different. And
she looks like she's mixed a little.
Yeah, she doesn't, I don't know all the features in Africa. I'll admit that. And Africa is very diverse. You guys may not know this, but the Human Genome Project, Africans are more diverse than the rest of the world combined. We'll let that simmer. The rest of the world combined genetically. So it's going to be very tough, even for me, who I study Africans, I look at African features. If she were West African, I would say she's probably from a region that African Americans typically don't come from.
Yeah.
I would also argue that she could be East African because of her features. There's something different about her cheekbones, and her lips are very different, and around her eyes are different, but her hair is a dead giveaway that she's African. That's African hair. So I would say maybe East African or somewhere in West Africa that I'm not familiar with.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to number 12. Number 12, put up on screen.
She's really unique looking. I would say that, I mean, she wouldn't strictly fit into black or Indian. She looks like she's Brazilian.
Yeah, we had a Brazilian.
Italian or something.
Right. Definitely some black because of the hair. The hair is a dead giveaway. I don't think her face looks African to me. But I can tell there is, I know there's African in her, but my first guess would be Brazilian. I wouldn't guess Ethiopian. She doesn't have those features of the North Africans, but I would say something like a black and Latin Hispanic mixed. I would say she's a mix of black and Hispanic, but what do you guys think? But we're gonna give you the answer right here, but what is she?
She's Indian.
She's Indian. So there you go. I mean, and once again, we don't have DNA to look at some of this stuff, but what do you see in her face that looks Indian to you?
Well, I'm just going straight off of that she was listed as an Indian woman.
Okay, but do you see, just looking at her as an Indian, you've looked at tons of Indian people.
I would not think she was Indian.
You wouldn't think she was Indian
No.
by looking at her. But she's Indian.
Yeah.
Is she mixed? Does she know?
She's an Afro-Indian.
Oh, she's Afro-Indian. Okay,
Yeah.
see, that makes sense. So she,
Yeah.
I was going to say she has the mixed look.
Yeah.
She definitely has the mixed look. Okay. All right, we're going to move on. Let's go to our next set of slides. Let's move a little bit quickly through this.
Okay.
Number 13, we'll try to blow this up, put it on the screen. These kids, what do you guys think? Let you put your answers in the comments. We're not doing this live, obviously, but go ahead and put your answers in the comments, what you thought she was, what you thought they are. We've obviously got some men on this. We're going to get into some men. So number 13. These kids, based on our conversation, based on what I know now about Afro-Indians, some of these kids look mixed, like this kid in the bottom in the red,
Yeah.
throwing up gang signs or whatever he's doing. He looks mixed. He looks like he could be mixed with something.
But generally speaking, they would look like they were in Africa.
Yeah, they look like they're in Africa, maybe East Africa, Horn of Africa. This girl in the back, she looks pure African to me. Do you see anything in their faces that might indicate anything otherwise? All right, let's go to the next one, number 14. Click on that. Number 14, once again, this person looks like there's definitely African blood, but there's something else going on in this person's ancestry. They don't look full African to me. Most African Americans would probably look at this person and say, oh, they're black. Yeah. We have a way of simplifying things. But I'm looking at I'm looking past, oh, this person looks black. I'm looking deeper into this person's face, and I'm looking at the skin tone. Around the eyes are very indicative of something else. I'm gonna say black with a little sprinkle of some ethnicity, some other ethnicity in the back. But what do you think? I'm gonna say 80% black, something else.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
What do you think? Okay, so mix. Okay. Did you know what the mix is in the background? No. Okay.
I just know she's an Afro-Indian.
Afro-Indian, once again, guys, very interesting. Most African Americans aren't familiar with Afro-Indian. You know, this is very, very interesting.
Truthfully, I wasn't until I started looking into it for this topic. I didn't know there was a lot of Africans that were taken to India.
I didn't know that either. That's fascinating to me. I want to get more into that. All right, number 15. You guys are going to recognize her, obviously. This is Mindy Kaling or Mindy Kaling?
Mindy Kaling.
Mindy Kaling. Well, we already know what Mindy Kaling is, but what does she look like to you guys? Obviously, the skin. We're going to go back to our conversation on skin. The skin looks like black person. She looks like me, my skin.
Well, the thing I want to get back to is, like, she looks like she's an Indian woman to me, but she's a dark-skinned Indian woman. And my point, again, is that there's no difference between a black person's skin color, whether it's in Africa or the United States, and an Indian's skin color.
Right.
We all have the same skin color.
And I've read about an anthropologist. I was reading some anthropology on skin color, and he said there is no difference between black Africans and Indians. This is what one anthropologist said. So it's interesting. The next one?
Yeah.
Let's go to number 16. We're going to look at number 16 up on the screen.
Number 16, if I saw that guy in the street, I would think that he was just a regular black guy.
Leroy.
Yeah.
I don't know if people name their kids Leroy anymore, Dante, or, Jabari. I don't know. Whatever. Some African-American name. Does he look African-American? He could pass for African-American. He might be African-African.
He's like straight African.
Yeah, he could be straight African. I've seen African-Americans who kind of look like that, but he could be straight African. Do you have any information on him?
None.
Okay, so just a black guy. All right, so we fooled you with that one.
But he's actually, he's an Indian.
He's Afro-Indian, so he's one of the Afro-Indians that are bought there. Quick story. I was in Thailand. I was at a university. You may know it's a university in our community. I was in a gazebo studying. I was doing a master's education, TESOL. I thought I was going to live overseas. I was like, oh, I'm definitely staying overseas. I love this. Overseas is great, blah, blah, blah. Simple life, easy life, away from all the stress and drama that's in America. I see a group of what I would identify as black women walking toward me. And being curious, overseas you get a little bit more friendly,
Yeah.
Being curious, I asked them, hey, where are you from? We're from Indonesia. What? Hair, black hair. They were a little bit lighter skinned.
Yeah.
They were definitely lighter than Mindy Kaling. They were lighter than me. We're from Indonesia. Blown away.
That's kind of cool.
Did some research, found out black Africans from East Africa traveled out to Indonesia in the Pacific before slavery. They went out there and settled different places. So there you have it. So they are black, but they're from Indonesia. Fascinating. Number 17. Let's pull number 17 up. To me, I'm looking at the hair. She's got straight hair. 20 years ago, I would not have known what she was, but after doing all my research, I know she's South Indian.
Yep.
I can tell she's South Indian. She looks different. She doesn't look like an African.
She's the dark-skinned Indian woman.
She's a dark-skinned Indian woman. She doesn't look African. There's something different about her look. But I can tell she's, but.
She looks like, I've got a hard life and I'm dealing with it.
Yeah. No smiling.
No.
Maybe that picture was taken without her knowing, but maybe, But she definitely, to me, is South Indian. But I want to highlight, once again, the skin. Look at the skin. She's darker than both of us. Here we are on screen. Yeah. You guys can see that. Sagey's a little bit, lighter than me. But here we have this East Indian lady who's darker than both of us.
Yep.
Right. All right, let's move on to number 18. Well, once again, another example of, these guys look black to me.
Yeah, totally black.
Especially with the guy with the sunglasses. Now, obviously, these people speak local language, right?
Yep.
Interesting. All right. This number 19 is going to blow you guys away. Let's go to number 19. Number 19. Have you guys seen anyone like this before? We don't have this represented in America. We don't have this ethnic group represented in America. Very, very different.
Number 19 is the darkest by skin color of all of the people that we've had up.
Yeah. She looks purple or blue.
And she's darker than most people you'd find in Africa as well.
Yeah, and it's a different color. It's so dark that it looks blue or purple. You know, this isn't black. This is like a very dark purple, but unique. Very unique. And you know, most black people have probably never, most African Americans have never seen anyone that's looked like this. Most Americans have never seen anyone who's looked like this. I remember seeing her picture years and years ago and just being blown away. I couldn't believe it. But the hair straight for sure. But as a people, now what? I wouldn't know. Obviously, we're playing the game black or Indian, so she either has to be one of the other or mixed. But at first glance, looking at her, I wouldn't put her in India. I wouldn't know where to put her.
I wouldn't either. I mean, honestly, I would know she's Indian based on the clothing, and what she has on her face. But other than that, like growing up, she wouldn't have looked like anyone I knew.
Right, like she looks totally different. But you know, someone God created, a human being, and what do they call? What are these? What's this ethnic group called in India? Have people studied them?
I don't even know.
Based on their language? Okay.
For sure.
All right, so very interesting, guys. Looking at this. Oh, you mentioned the Indian gods. We were talking about this. Can you tell our audience what they?
So then, I was in a temple and I was looking at the artwork, and they showed this blue. The god was blue. And showed him as a blue baby, and I finally asked one of the tour guides or the priest, and I said, "Why is this guy blue?" Mm-hmm. And it turns out that was their depiction of this very dark-skinned god. So I imagine that he might have been really dark like her. And they portray him as being blue to show that he was so much darker than, well, everyone else.
Next one, number 20. Put number 20 up on screen. Definitely mixed race. The hair is a giveaway. Yep. The nose is a giveaway. That nose definitely looks like it's got some African influence in it. Yep. The lips look African. The eyebrows are different though. A lot of African Americans don't, or black people don't have eyebrows like that. The skin does look kind of unique. He looks like a mixed guy. He looks like he's mixed, like some mixed guy you see, maybe like half black, half Hispanic, something like that. What do you think?
I would say he was black.
Just black?
He's like island black, but I mean,
maybe like a Trinidadian. Because he looks.
But he looks mixed, but I would say he's mostly black.
Yeah, mostly black. Yeah. What'd you find out about him? You have information on him?
Afro-Indian.
Afro-Indian. Wow. All right, guys, we're going to move on to the next one, but number 21 up on the screen. Well, to me, number 21 looks...
She just looks like a dark-skinned Indian woman.
She looks like an Indian woman. You know, kind of weird, I guess. She got something popping out of her. Didn't notice that. Maybe you can see something coming out right there. Won't mention that on camera, but her arms are dark. She looks like a dark skin. Her skin, if you were to cover her face, she looks like a typical African American skin. Yeah. Typical person. Face.
Yep.
Face looks Indian. Hair is a dead giveaway. Straight, black silky hair, definitely. Did she two-tone her hair there? Looks like she dyed it maybe a little bit. Kind of.
Yeah.
But yeah, she looks like an Indian, a darker Indian. But I could see some black people who have never come across an Indian this color getting confused. Possibly getting confused, but when they see the hair, they're gonna know right away she's not African American or not black. All right, very good. That's the end of our game, Black or Indian. All right, please like, share, and subscribe. Go ahead and send this to a friend. Let us know, let them know about the game. We're curious to hear what your thoughts are. All right, we're gonna get into our next section. We're gonna do, we're going to do some more questions. This is gonna be a longer episode, so we're gonna do a few more questions. And maybe let's get into the business stuff. Let's talk about skin bleaching and stuff like that. Let's get into that topic and colorism. All right, so our next section is gonna be on the business of, we're gonna talk about skin bleaching in the different communities. We're gonna talk about colorism and what's going on. We'll be right back in a second. All right, guys, we are back. We're gonna talk about the business of, you know, in India and in Africa, there's a huge market for skin bleaching. And I want to get your take first, but so we're going to talk about the business of skin bleaching, the business of skin, and then we're going to talk about colorism. I'll talk about Black American community, and Sagey will talk about what he's seen in his community. So business of, let's get into, so tell us about, we'll put this on the screen, we'll put A on the screen for right now. So
this is actually a rebranding of a product known as Fair and Handsome. So now you have it called Glow and Handsome because Fair was sounding too, I guess, colorist or racist. And it is a product that is from a line by, I think, Unilever that started out with Fair and Lovely.
Isn't that a French company? Unilever?
I don't know.
I think they're French. Let me look it up.
They make all kinds of products.
But look at their name. They still go by Fair and Lovely.
But
they removed a little bit of the sting by calling it Glow and Handsome instead of Fair and Handsome.
Yeah.
Fair and Handsome's are pretty direct.
Well, Fair and Lovely, I think they might still call the women's line that. Oh. But I think they were actually sued by some people in India after the Black Lives Matter protests as well, because they were like, basically.
That affected India?
In some ways, because there's a lot of dark skin, Indian people, like we've been saying, there's no difference in skin color between a black person typically and an Indian. There's the same color variations. Actually, India might have more variations in skin color, but the dark skinned people in India are just as dark as the darkest people you'll ever find in Africa, and probably more so.
Okay, so we're talking about the business of real quick, but I'm actually curious, and I want to get a little bit, just tell us a little bit more about the BLM thing. What was happening in India with that, just real quick, before we get back to the business of skin bleaching?
Well, because in the U.S., we look at it and say, well, dark people or black people in the U.S. may be discriminated against, but in India, it's also dark-skinned Indian people who are discriminated against by other lighter-skinned Indian people.
Right. So, what were the Indians saying? Like, what was?
I don't know too much about like how that directly applied, but it did come up, and
so it was a point of contention. People were moved by the movement.
Correct.
How come we didn't see anything on this on TV? That's interesting. I'm wondering why that never.
Well, I think that we don't in the media. I think in the U.S. We don't want to show what's happening in other places.
Especially with protests?
Well, it's not even that. It's just racism and colorism is far worse in other places in the world than in the United States. But we want it to appear that this is something that is a uniquely American problem.
For political problems, for political...
Correct. It's for political, it's expediency.
Yeah.
Because you look at it, so just to give you an idea, in the U.S. over at least the last 30 years, depending on your perspective, we've grown up in this kind of victimhood culture where you're a victim of someone. You have to. If you're not successful, it's because you're a victim.
Gotcha.
And you don't have to take responsibility if you're a victim.
Now, I get it. So we can go on and on about this, but I'll make one comment, and then maybe we could move on. When it comes to the victim part, at one point people were victims, right? But Like the analogy I gave earlier with starting the engine.
Yep.
One person starts the engine, that's creating a victim. The other person, and then later on, it's up to you whether to turn the engine off or not. You can leave the engine on and step on the gas. That's you. Then it becomes self-inflicted. It's like, oh, I'm just going to keep doing this to myself because you started it. It's your fault. And then there's the option of saying, you know what? We're not going to do this anymore.
Correct.
We're done with this. No one's forcing us to call each other this name, this word. We're doing it. So
when do you stop being a victim?
So you have to stop being a victim. But there is still a little bit of, there's still going to be evil in the world. There's still evil people. There's still people who are going to try to oppress people. But laws have kind of forced them to take the foot off the gas when it comes to victimizing people at a large extent, right? All right, so real quick, the company Unilever that makes Fair and Lovely, if you go back to it, Glow and Handsome for guys, as you guys can see on the screen, Unilever is a British multinational consumer packaged good company, founded in 1929, following the merger of British soap maker Lever Brothers and Dutch margarine producer Margarine Uni. It is headquartered in London. Now, this is especially disturbing considering that the British not only controlled America, where we live now, they controlled India, and they controlled Jamaica, where my family comes from. How does this look when a British company who are considered white people and who pride themselves on being white, how does this look when they are selling this to colored people?
Well, I think it's like you said, you have something that starts in motion and people keep on feeding it.
Right, right.
So I don't blame English people
For capitalizing?
For whatever. I mean, good for them for capitalizing. If I could sell something that someone's literally dumb enough to keep on buying, I'll sell it to them. And
Is it?
So then at a certain point, it becomes a community needs to take ownership for what's happening. You're not a victim. Like, for example, and there's a lot of studies. If you look at the Carnegie Institute had something where they looked at Indian Americans in terms of experiencing racism. Indian Americans versus people who were born in India and immigrated to the United States.
Right.
American-born Indian Americans experienced or reported way higher rates of racism than people who were from India.
Interesting. Is it possible? Let me look at that argument. Let me look at this. Because I know some immigrant groups are afraid to complain about things because they're afraid of getting a bad name or something happening to their immigration stay, or
I think that
is there incentive for a person to not complain about certain things?
Well, I think that what you're saying might go into kind of the model minority type of argument, where Indians are viewed as a model minority because they're successful, they don't complain. But the fact of the matter is, another way of looking at it is, though, that Indians experience way worse racism and colorism in their own country. And the ones who arrive here the ones who were born in the United States report these higher rates of victimhood because they've been educated by instructors who've ingrained this victimhood mentality into themselves.
I can definitely see that. Check your level right there. We're just going to continue. I'm at 1 bar, so
I am too.
Okay, so let's look at it this way. I'll make one more final point on this, and I think that's a legitimate. I think the system does teach people how to complain. Sometimes the complaints are legitimate.
Correct.
Sometimes the complaints are overblown. We know this. We've seen this happen over and over. Sometimes people invent racism because oftentimes when you set up some sort of edifice to some sort of structure, to a reporting system, sometimes people, they feel like they need to report. For instance, kids, a good example is parents will ask kids, has anyone touched you in that way? Has anyone touched you? Has anyone touched you? And from what I've learned about that, when you ask a child that, they will sometimes invent it because they think that's what you want them to say. Mm-hmm. So I almost feel like that may be something that's happening with some immigrants or some young people. And I feel like some of the immigrants, maybe they're so used to more racism. When they come here, this is racism light compared to coming from back home. And they're just like, this isn't a huge deal. I don't care about this. What do you think about that? Is that possible?
That could definitely be a part of it as well.
Okay. So there's maybe a few things that but there's going to be a bunch of things that fall in the middle, but there's probably real racism. And then there's probably not racism, probably just some other things that are happening, maybe rudeness or some other things that may not directly be racism, like you,
correct,
horrible black person, or whatever name they want to call black people or Indian people. All right, so let's get into.
Well, if you look at letter B.
Yeah, letter B right here. Okay, let's put that on the screen.
Letter B, you have a very famous Indian actor, right? Mm-hmm. And he's honestly pretty light-skinned, but he's also advertising fair and handsome, because the idea then is, if you use his product, you might look like me.
Right.
You're going to be more appealing to the opposite sex, or just in general, you're going to be perceived differently by the population. It might lead to career advancement.
True.
It might lead to better dating prospects. Mm-hmm. And
so just better life in general.
Correct.
Now, in India, this gentleman, he's an actor. I've seen him before. He's like very famous actor, right?
He's probably the single most famous actor on the planet.
Okay, so
because of how many people watch Bollywood movies.
Okay, yeah, true. So he's what Indians would call dusky, right? That skin complexion?
No, he's probably pretty light skinned.
Is that considered light?
Well, that might be a little dark right there, and the way the photograph is coming through, but
yeah, he looks like what I've seen is described as dusky in that picture. So he's lighter than that in real life, is what you're saying, right?
At least from what it looks like in the movies, but we don't know how accurate that is either.
Okay,
because they could filter that.
All right, so they're obviously targeting people who are darker than him. Mm-hmm. So, now in America, looking at picture B, in America, I don't know if you're aware of this, but black men don't bleach their skin. Women have been caught doing it. I was actually looking at an article here a little bit ago. Let me read a little bit of this to you.
And I think I didn't know Indian men bleach their skin either. I actually had a roommate whose mom would send him this stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
It's disturbing. Hold on. I had an article up here. It was from NBC. And it was basically, let me do this quickly since we're live. But basically they asked, they took some surveys. They were asking mainly black women. Mm-hmm. And this was, I don't remember exactly where this was, but here's another one here. Skin bleaching among African and Afro-Caribbean women in New York City. This is a big one, but the main thing is that a lot of these women were admitting to bleaching their skin. And I found that interesting, but it's not something that's openly discussed.
Yeah.
It's hidden. And
in India, they have advertisements on TV.
But do people admit to taking it in India? So they're past the stage of them being ashamed of it. It's kind of like how Europeans.
I mean, look at it. If you actually look at what's being communicated in the picture for A, I mean, they're showing a DNA strand. So ultimately what you're trying to do
Didn't
is
even notice that. Wow.
modify your DNA so that you don't have to use this product in the future. I mean, a topical cream isn't going to ever do that. It might bleach your skin, but who knows if it causes other problems. So when we're looking at the business of, there's a business of how much money is Unilever making, okay?
Right.
Like you pointed out, it's a British company. How much money are they making on this, on Fair and Lovely and Fair and Handsome? Then you flip it. Now, what is the downside of using this product? Does it increase your chance of skin cancer? Does it increase other health risks? What is the cost in terms of mental health for people who can't get to the optimal skin color according to themselves or their family? And then how are they treated for things that are completely outside of their control? So then when you're talking about the mental health costs, it's probably incalculable.
It is. It's. I know a lot of people try to justify. I've watched videos on it. I've seen people try to justify why they're using it. They'll use all sorts of euphemistic terms like, "Oh, we want my skin to be even complexion."
Yeah.
So it takes away from the fact that you're trying to lighten your skin, but you're massaging the words and making it seem as if you're correcting something that's wrong with your skin. And that's not always the case. Let me read this real quick. L'Oreal, I'm guessing is a French company, Unilever, British, assess skin lightening products but won't quit the multi-billion-dollar market. This is written by Forbes. Jemima McEvoy. Let's see. Title. Okay, so that's the title of the article. A new wave of criticism over skin lightening products, especially popular in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East, has led major companies like L'Oreal and Unilever to reassess creams, cleansers, and masks that promote whiter skin. Though their recent announcements show a hesitancy to quit a controversial market worth billions of dollars. Here's a fact. Key facts. Reuters, another news agency, if you guys aren't familiar with Reuters, I think they're British as well, right?
I think so.
Reuters reported Friday that L'Oreal, the world's biggest cosmetics company, has decided to remove words referring to white, fair, and light from its skin evening products sold under its Garnier brand.
So they're skin evening products.
Even they're being euphemistic in their approach, right? I mean,
and truthfully, I wouldn't exit the market because there's money to be made. I mean, that's capitalism. Now, the problem though is the people who are buying the product should be educated.
Right.
And they shouldn't. I mean, I would never recommend anyone buy any of these products.
To me, the business side, you mentioned a couple of the downsides, right? You mentioned the human toll when it comes to cancer. There's cancer that they can get from this. I believe it could also cause liver issues because what a lot of people need to realize is your skin, it's called the integumentary system. That's the medical term for it. It's the largest organ on your body.
Yep.
What you put on your skin goes into your body. I don't know if people realize this. I never thought this. I never thought this through.
So you don't like absorbing bleach?
Yeah, people don't like. So what goes on your skin goes in, and this could affect your liver.
Yeah.
So these are chemicals. So I personally, I don't think I'd be in this business because of what it can do to people. I think you're producing a product like that to help out people who
have uneven skin tone.
Not that many people have. I know it's really sad. I know we're catering to a market. We're being capitalist. You know, it makes me wonder what these people would do if there were no creams and stuff that they could buy.
They probably use the less safe product.
Maybe a less safe product, or maybe they try to find some natural way. Now, what I would do, and I'll be honest, I know there are natural ways to lighten your skin without using harsh chemicals. I've read about it. I've seen people do it in videos, and they use things like lemon. They use the acidity of lemon. So, and there's some other things. I think a natural product like that, because I've looked at it both ways. I'm like, okay, it looks bad when you have European companies who tell people from other countries your skin is not as good as ours. They've mentioned that in so many words, right? And then for them to turn around and sell you products and make billions off of this insecurity they placed on you.
These are multinational corporations that are they might be headquartered somewhere, but the shareholders, and if you look at their management leadership team, they're from everywhere. It's kind of like looking at a South Korean car manufacturer and saying, well, it's a Korean car, when they might be building it in Tennessee or Indiana, Ohio. And for all intents and purposes, it's an American car.
Right. Let's look at it this way. Let me push back a little bit. I live in Korea. Koreans view Hyundai, which means modern, by the way, guys. Hyundai means modern. They view Hyundai and Kia as Korean jewels of society, a place where you really want to work. Actually, the number one company kids want to work for, young people when they graduate college, is Samsung. That's where they really want to work, right? But they view these as Korean, kind of like how we view Ford and Chevy. It's an icon. These are icons of a country. If Hyundai stops making cars, that decision will come from Korea. It's not going to come from the United States. Even though we build the cars here, true. We have factories here. But if they decide, you know what, we're done with the car business, that decision won't be made in the United States. It'll be made over there. Let me tie this into Unilever and L'Oreal. Unilever, being British, all of the major decisions are made in England, in London, at the headquarters. The genesis of these companies, the beginning of these companies are European people, I believe. I'm pretty sure they're European people. You know, I'm going to look this up live.
Well, here's the thing. Like, I mean, we look at it. Let's say the CEO of Unilever is English. Well, the Prime Minister of the UK is an Indian. So
the Prime Minister of the UK is not Indian?
He is Indian.
Oh, he is Indian.
Well,
okay.
I mean, he was.
The UK. That's right. The
yeah,
UK,
he might have been born in. He's Indian English or whatever they say over there.
Right.
But my point is that with the modern world, it's really hard to say I'm going to blame one specific group for what's going on. I think that we're past the era of being able to do that and claim victimhood in that manner. And that goes for the United States as well. I mean, like, we have to be going towards something that's more positive. And I think that's why even when we're looking at the beginning stages of the American political debate for who will be our next president in 2024, we've got to run towards some message that offers us something rather than looking backwards and saying, oh man, I'm a victim again. Oh shucks. Because if you look at it, Indians were victims in their own country.
Right.
The British took advantage. They stripped resources. And you can keep on looking backwards. You can't change what happened in the past. We can change and control what happens in the future. And that's what education needs to be designed for us to do.
Right. Okay, so selling, the business of, it's sort of a controversial business.
Yeah.
Because you're catering to people who are, for lack of a better term, ashamed of their skin color.
Correct.
In Africa, Asia, and I forgot the other market. Africa, Asia, Latin America, or whatever, or somewhere. You're catering to people who have, who are ashamed of their skin color, but let's look at the origins of this skin color self-hatred. Where does it come from? Is it something? Is it a byproduct of colonialism?
It might be.
Could be.
Because you have the same colorism and issues. We're focusing on Indians and Africans or Black Americans or whatever, right? Black people. Indians and Black people. But you have the same issues when you're looking at, for example, Mexicans. Darker skinned Mexicans feeling oppressed by lighter skinned Mexicans.
Invaders.
Lighter Filipinos discriminating against darker Filipinos. Lighter Italians discriminating against southern darker Italians.
Right.
And saying, well, they're lowlifes and they're
That's sad.
criminals. And you have the same thing in Brazil, where you have these ways of separating and segmenting society that are very problematic to the people who live there and experience and are truly victims of this kind of thing.
I think what I'm saying is I think it's catering to a disease, a mental disease. Not a mental disease in terms of like some sort of imbalance, but it's catering to a social contagion, a problem, an insecurity that people have. And it's an insecurity that was placed on them, you know, in situations where we're talking about inequities, injustices, and that sort of thing. I mean,
and the thing is, you also said that most of the people who, at least in the Black American community or the Black community, it's women who use these products, not men.
Right. It's in the United States.
Correct.
It's women. Yeah.
But the two best examples that I was able to find on this are men. One of them being the very famous example of Michael Jackson, and looking at all of the modifications that he made to himself over time to go from being a really handsome Black child to being
a white woman?
I don't even know. But I'll tell you, the last pictures of him look very much like something from a movie where,
people die in horrible ways.
well, people die in horrible ways, and it's, yeah.
Can you guys see this? I'll probably end up putting this on the screen. You can't see him. This is William Lever. William Lever is one of the founders of Lever, Unilever. And he is a white man. So anyway, I'm not sure if he's the originator of the product, but he was in charge, and they decided, and it's several European countries trying to sell these products, and it's also Johnson & Johnson, which is American, right?
Yeah.
Johnson & Johnson also makes these skin lightening products, but guess what? They don't sell them. They don't sell these products in mainstream stores in the United States. When I was in Thailand, I was in Tesco. So I was telling you guys about this. I was in Tesco. I went there looking for lotion. Everything I found had skin lightening ingredients in it. And it said it right on the front. I couldn't believe it. But they would never sell that in the United States. But the American women who were buying it, they're getting it like in immigrant stores, like Asian, Caribbean stores. They're getting it that way, through that supply chain. But the same companies who make these skin products, look at Lever 2000, that's made by Unilever. They don't sell their skin bleaching stuff here in the United States. Very interesting, don't you think? For a product that...
I think there's less of a market in the U.S.
But there is a market.
They
know there's a market now because they're doing research, and they know that there are women who are buying it. And there are a lot of there's people from Asia here, tons of immigrants from Asia and Africa who use these products back in their countries.
Well, the thing is, I mean, there's a bigger market. I think the market's going to increase on it because now you have people who are trans Black, people who are trans white, you know, like people who
You think Rachel Dolezal will buy some?
she
wants to be darker. She wants to be
darker.
Yeah, she wants to be darker.
You can look at pictures of her before and after. I mean,
Hilarious.
there are people who want to identify as the opposite race or a different race.
That's true. Let's take a look at some more of these pictures and let's move on from the business of. All right, so let's put Michael Jackson up on the screen. This is
Unfortunate.
letter D. So we've got black man, white woman on the right. Unfortunately, he's transracial. He was transracial before it was a thing.
Yeah.
Let's put up the next image. Letter D. We've got
Sammy Sosa.
Sammy Sosa, who now looks like a idiot.
Yeah, that's actually.
He went from black to being an idiot. Look.
He looked normal, and now he looks like some kind of cross between Michael Jackson and an albino.
And the skin looks unnatural. Well, it doesn't look like something you would necessarily see on a Hispanic. It just doesn't. It looks weird. It looks different. I don't know.
Let's move on to E. See, the point is,
Let's put E up on the screen.
if you see and you use these products, you will be happier. Look at it. When she's darker,
She's not smiling.
Yeah, she's not smiling.
Oh man, so that's the secret to smiling?
You got to be light.
You got to be light. If you're not light, it's not right. Nothing's all right. If you're not light, nothing goes right.
But fortunately, you can remedy that. If you get fair and lovely, you too can have a beautiful smile like she does in the last picture.
Smile. Wow, she's showing teeth in that last picture.
Yeah.
In the first one, she's...
Oh, look how grumpy she is.
She looks pretty grumpy. But that's actually the skin tone I prefer on a woman, so that's a pretty skin tone. The other one's not too bad either, but yeah, it's just preference. All right, so let's do this. We're gonna go ahead and move into. Are we done with this business of section? All right, so we talked about skin similarities. Let's get into colorism. When we come back, we're gonna talk about colorism. We're gonna talk about the differences and the similarities in the colorism debate. All right, back in just a second. All right, so we're going to talk about colorism, Indian African community. Okay, now, I'll say in the black community, it's really interesting. In the Indian community, from what I'm understanding, it seems to be pretty standard across the board. This is what's pretty, this is what's not. Mm-hmm. In the black community, I watch a lot of dating shows, right? Black women, 99% of the time, request a dark-skinned man.
Wow.
Fascinating. Now, I don't know why that is. Dark-skinned black men they're just more attractive to black women. How's that in the Indian culture? Because we see, fair and handsome or whatever guy.
Well, I mean, I wonder if that's what happened to Sammy Sosa over there.
If he were in America, he would just get destroyed. People would laugh at him. Black people would destroy him in America. We destroyed him from here, but he's over hiding in the Dominican Republic.
I think it would be almost universal that Indians would say that light skin is more attractive than dark skin.
And you see, regardless of the gender,
no difference.
And you see, it's consistent. See, with black men, I've seen a mix on the dating shows. Mm-hmm. A lot of black men prefer a woman who is a little bit lighter than them, tad bit lighter. There's some black men who deal specifically only with light-skinned black women. Okay, so they sort of model this attitude that the Indians have. Same thing, same. So there's some similarities there, right? Which is interesting because we're not talking about hair. But let me throw this in as an extra. This is a bonus. Black women are more likely to straighten their hair and adjust their hair, do things to their hair to keep it straight. Yet, they want dark-skinned black guys. Black guys are more likely to keep their hair natural. This is natural African hair. Yet, prefer lighter-skinned women, which is unnatural for black people.
Yeah.
Fascinating how
Everything's flipped.
when everything's flipped. You would think that the woman who would want a dark-skinned guy, internally, she would be healed of this sort of internalized racism, and she would also want for herself natural hair, right? And natural skin, right? Mm-hmm. But these are the women who are bleaching their skin. Isn't that fascinating?
Or putting all kinds of artificial hair in.
Or putting artificial hair in, which comes from India, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Sore topic. I know that's a difficult topic to talk about. But anyway, so one of the things I've noticed when I was doing a little research on the colorism debate, there's a similar tone between Indian women and black women. Indian women are complaining about, especially the darker skinned Indian women, brown skin, they're complaining about the fact that there's so much racism against dark skin. Mm-hmm. There are black women who also who share that hill that they're willing to die on, and they're protesting the colorism.
Well,
so there's the same thing about communities. That's what's fascinating.
It was fascinating when in the second season of Bridgerton, they cast a relatively, at least by Indian standards, a dark-skinned Indian woman as the lead female role, Simone Ashley.
Who I love, by the way.
Because I think there were a lot of comments from people in India where some people were very happy that she was cast. Other people said, well, she's not beautiful, so why would you put this person in this role? And it's really tragic because it's based solely on skin color, because she has
beautiful features. She's absolutely beautiful. Her skin's beautiful too. I'd say her skin is probably what mine is, just kind of looking about my skin. And I think overall she's a beautiful person. But let me, when it comes to fashion, when it comes to modeling, she looks like a model. She has a model type body. Mm-hmm. She's thin. Fashion houses have typically put people in who look very different from the majority, who mm-hmm. go against the grain, right? You'll see some of the blackest Africans who will become models.
Yep.
Who typically don't possess the beauty that African Americans would consider pretty, but they put them there as models. And this is something Europeans are doing.
Well, I think that right now we're in a really unique time period because we're not even taking what has, and I'm not saying that we should use what has traditionally been considered beautiful in all instances, but the whole body positivity campaign has had tragic consequences because we now view people like Lizzo as being supposedly beautiful. And that is
Lizzo
absolutely not beautiful.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you.
Nor is it healthy. I mean,
it's definitely not healthy. All right, so we have our similarities. Now, what have you heard about? What do Indian women say about the skin color? What have you heard, like in your family or in your circles? What have you heard about dark people?
Well,
what do they say?
Growing up as a kid, my grandmother would always want us to come inside during the day because she's like, you're going to be really dark if you stay outside. So it was always come inside during the middle part of the afternoon. Or,
Some black families did the same thing.
Wear long sleeve shirts or make sure you have a hat on. Just a bunch of different things like that, which was fine because they'd grown up in a different, in that type of a world. Growing up in the United States, it was always kind of, at least for me, it was a little perplexing because I grew up realizing I was Indian. I was like, okay, well, I'm brown. There's nothing I could do to be a different skin color or lighter. Right. Yeah, and I get darker in the sun, and then I'll lighten up in the winter, And one thing that was really interesting, since I went to school in Canada and there's a lot less sun over there, I got pretty yellow after being up in Canada.
In Canada?
Yeah.
Interesting. All right, so yeah, some black families, I've heard the same thing from black people. They'll tell especially the girls. They don't tell the boys that per se, but the girls come back inside. So there's a sort of a bipolar type of view when it comes to natural skin here in the United States with black people.
Yeah.
It seems like the women are mainly the victims of this beauty standard. Light-skinned guys especially light-skinned black guys, are actually facing open discrimination now by black women.
Wow.
They're saying that they don't want to date them.
Just based on their skin color.
Just based on the skin color. It's racism. So now it's like, I think it's...
But it's okay.
Colorism. It's colorism.
It's okay if women do that.
Oh, of course. Women are never right. What do you mean? Women are, they're always right.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm so used to saying never right. Which I don't mean. That's a joke. But yeah, you believe all women. I mean, obviously. But yeah, there's open colorism watching these dating shows, and they'll openly say they don't want a light-skinned black guy, which is very, very different from India. I've heard stuff about the wanted ads for spouses and stuff. What do you know about that?
Oh yeah, well they'll put in what type of complexion they're looking for. They'll say what complexion the person, let's say it's a girl, what her complexion is, what complexion the other guy is, and this they'll actually say this is what I'm looking for.
You know, it's interesting, and this episode's about black American, black, and East Indian. But I want to mention real quick something I heard. Actually, a white Canadian told me this. She said she would never date a white guy who couldn't tan, like whose skin was untannable. She would never date a white guy like this who was untannable. And it's racism.
Yeah.
And then, white people have their own issues, their own culture, which is why they have tanning booths and stuff.
Why they get skin cancer.
And why you get skin cancer, because they're trying to...
Yeah.
Right, what's interesting, here's what's interesting. Let's go back to this. Because in terms of creating these products, we were, you were sort of okay with, maybe selling it to people.
Yeah.
But that could cause them cancer. Mm-hmm. On the flip side, it could cause liver damage as well. On the flip side, you've got white people who are definitely getting cancer, skin cancer, tanning, and they have a high rate of it. And, so they're harming themselves too.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not, and see, what's interesting about them is that no one in power told them they were too white and they have to change their skin color. You know what I mean? No one inflicted that on them. That was inflicted on our people, though. Well, Africans and Indians and Asians.
I think that things will change slowly because a more modern concept of beauty is not typically a totally pasty white person or
anymore.
And unfortunately or fortunately, it's never been a really dark person. It's kind of in the middle, where that you have that kind of brown, light brown skin, and that's where a lot of people are going to be over time, especially with the increase in interracial marriages and different things like that. We kind of are all going to be mulatto over time.
That's true, but it is true. It is true. I mean, but I think it's what I've seen. It looks like dark skin wins out, even when everyone's mixing. Because you look at the Brazilians, people will have clearly straight or long curly hair, but then be dark skin. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a mixed bag, but I think you're just going to have a ton of racial ambiguity.
Well, and the thing is, we have to realize, again, I'm going to go back to saying this, so we're all part of the same family, and, there's that really famous set of twins from the UK. You have one sister who looks pretty much white. Let's
put this up on screen, okay?
And
National Geographic, put up behind us.
Yeah, and you have the other sister, and they're both twins, same age. The mom was white, obviously, and you can see that in the picture. And the dad was black, but...
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Even though...
Would it make sense to discriminate against one sister? I mean, it doesn't. It's just...
It really doesn't.
It's a ridiculous...
That's fascinating.
It's a ridiculous construct that we've created and arbitrarily pushed on as a standard for, ourselves, our own families. I mean, this is the same family, and they have 2 children that are totally different.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were the aunt and uncle, are you going to discriminate against one or the other, or what do you do? Or do you just accept that there are differences?
Yeah, this is interesting. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that happens in mixed race couples anyway.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into, we're done with colorism. Let's talk about, real quick, forbidden marriages. I don't think we have a top 10 today. That's fine. Yeah, that's fine, too. We don't need a top 10. There's no top 10 for this. Forbidden marriages. This is kind of a tough subject here, but
well, in the
kind of goes back to the beginning. But go ahead.
In the U.S., you have a whole bunch of laws that are called miscegenation laws.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of that term?
I have. Yeah. I didn't know how to pronounce it, but I know what it is. Yeah.
These laws were basically laws that were in place in some states are still on the books that prevent people from different races from legally getting married to a person of a different race.
Right.
And a lot of these were placed by, white people in the aftermath of the Civil War to prevent white and black mixing.
I know I was reading about this, they made some laws to prevent, they also made similar laws to prevent Filipino men who were over here working from marrying white women.
Yeah.
They made laws to prevent Chinese men who were here from marrying white women. They basically seem like a bunch of insecure, because we know it wasn't the women making these laws because they didn't have positions of lawmakers. Yeah. They couldn't even work. It was white men creating laws to protect or to try to keep their women from marrying other men, which just seems like a bunch of insecurities piled up.
Well, here's the thing. You could almost say that maybe there was a really really well thought out business plan where if you could completely restrict the immigration of females of different ethnic groups or racial groups into the United States, then if you were a white man who could then bring in, let's say, Chinese women, you could then sell those in those women in San Francisco for a higher price.
What do you mean sell? As in what?
Because there was bride prices. So if you actually look around the world, there were lots of places where you had a lot of Chinese men who were there building the railroads, mining, looking for, gold, all kinds of different things, laundromat owners.
Right.
And they wanted to get married to someone from their own ethnic group. However, those people were excluded from immigration. But if you were an enterprising businessman, you could bring a whole boatload of Chinese women over to sell them to these Chinese men.
So this was actually happening?
Yes.
Is this what you're saying was happening? Wow.
Absolutely.
So they were controlling the market.
Well, I'm not saying that was happening, but what I am saying was happening is if you go and look and study bride prices in places varying, all the way from Bangkok to San Francisco to Seattle, you'll find that in the Chinese communities, Chinese women had the highest bride price. Then it would drop down to lower prices for Korean, Thai, Filipino, because it would go by what these men were looking for, and they would be willing to pay the most for a Chinese woman. Then after that, it might be a Korean woman. But
so market rules.
Correct. It was a basic supply and demand
Supply and demand. All right, so forbidden marriages. Okay, so we talked about that. Now, forbidden marriages in India. Let's talk about that. And I'll talk about, I don't really think there is. I'll start with mine first because I think yours is going to be more complex. Between black people in America, someone told me a story once. This is interesting. He's dark-skinned. His ex was light-skinned black woman, like your Beyonce types. Green eyes, that kind of thing. The family did not want him to marry her because he was dark-skinned. And this is 2 black people in America now. Okay. That was a forbidden marriage. Okay, so we're going to talk about within, and then we're going to talk about Indian and then African American. We'll get into that here next. So hold on. All right, so yeah, they wanted to stop that marriage from happening. Now, it's very typical for black guys to marry light-skinned women. It happens all the time. Light-skinned black women. And light-skinned black women in the black community like dark-skinned men because of their own insecurities. A lot of these lighter-skinned black women they get rejected by other women, and they're told they're not black enough. They're not black. They're not really black. So then they have to make up for that by, they don't want their children to have to deal with that. So they marry a dark black guy, then their kids come out looking like me.
Yeah.
So, and I've seen this. I have examples that I can point to that in my own personal life where I see it happening. So, what about India?
Well, I've
Or here in the American community.
My family in the United States. I've got family that is, or cousins that are married to, from white to Asian. So it's like the whole, everything in between. But
what about in India though? Like between
India?
skin colors and.
Well, India is chopped up in a whole bunch of different ways. India is basically a British creation. India had a number of different kingdoms. They were independent kingdoms or nominally independent until independence in 1947.
Okay.
And it's only in the last almost 30 years that you have a unified Indian identity that has taken precedence over the individual states. So then, even as late as 20, 25 years ago, I remember hearing conversations, well, why do you have to date that person? You couldn't find someone from your own community or your own state, or the state you're like.
It's like tribalism?
Correct.
Kind of tribalism?
Yes.
Okay.
So then that
makes sense.
That was one layer. You know, it'd be like, well, why can't you get married to a person from New York if we're all from New York? Why did you have to find a Californian? They have different attitudes. Or maybe it would probably be better to say a New Yorker versus someone from Tennessee, because a person from Tennessee might have a different culture, different entertainment, you know, those kinds of things. But in terms of Indians, at least in the early 1980s, mid 1980s, what you wanted to avoid was getting married to a black guy.
Oh, a black American guy or a black Indian guy?
No, a black American guy.
Oh, okay. But what about, well, okay, so we're going to get into that. What about between Indians? Is there colorism, and when it comes to...
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
When it comes, okay, break that down.
So basically, if you want to marry someone who's lighter, the same
Always,
skin
no
color,
matter what.
or yeah,
Oh, same or lighter?
yeah. So then,
Okay, and that goes for men and women?
correct. So then,
Interesting.
when you're looking at it, what you said is in the black community in the United States, they don't really care what the male skin color was.
Right.
But in the Indian, the way of looking at it as an Indian is, if you're lighter, you're better. That's it.
Just period.
Yeah. I mean, and that might be changing now, but
You think it will really change though? It seems pretty ingrained.
I think it'll change over time.
But
I do.
do you think darker skinned Indian guys will ever be like a thing in style for the women?
If you look at the research, a lot of those guys are tech engineers. They're making a lot of money. So,
Is the money enough to move an Indian woman in that direction?
I would say
In
that
family, or is skin more important? Because
based on research, like in the United States on dating and divorce rates and everything else, well, it sure seems to be making an impact. So I do think that there's a certain amount of money that you can make that makes you colorblind.
Whoa, I can see.
Because the only color that matters is green.
Oh man, I heard. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, we're actually joking about this earlier, but I want to share the joke with you guys. So you guys know about love languages, right? People talk about different love languages. Well, this guy, someone actually I think it was on a dating show, and someone asked. It was a live dating show where these couple, they're trying to see if they pair up, and let me see if it was the woman or the man. I want to say, it was a guy who asked a woman about her love language. And I think it was a black woman. And if you guys, I mean, it's 2023. If you know how the black community is right now. People are just looking for the bag, and the bag means money. Looking for the money bag, right? I don't think it came out of hip hop. But he asked her what her love language was, and she said, "My love language is money."
At least she was honest.
She's being honest.
She was being honest.
Yeah, women are all about money right now. Just forget about everything else. All right, cool. Let's do this. What is our... Okay, we're going to talk about East Indian. I'll tell you who I find beautiful, and then Sagey's going to tell you any African American women or African American who he finds beautiful. We thought this would be interesting to you guys if you're watching this. You know, if you're Indian or if you're black, to see, you know, what an Indian man may think about people in another ethnic group who have similar skin tones. And sometimes, based on our earlier segment where guess Indian or black, guess which group they are. What's our exact title of that?
Well, I think we can go back even to those pictures and just say, hey,
Let's take a look at it.
like I think all of the women that we posted,
You think they're beautiful?
they're all beautiful in my opinion.
All right, so let's put this main image up. This is going to be the first slide here. I'll put all of them up. So
Yeah.
which numbers? So which one of these numbers are your favorite though? And
I
she's
would-
Indian, obviously.
I would say number 4 is the most beautiful one on there.
All right, number 4 is the most beautiful. Who's number 2?
Probably number 5.
Number 5. Okay. Who's number 3?
Number 1.
Number 1. Okay, yeah, she's cute. Cute. She's pretty. I actually like number 2. Number 2 is kind of my style. She's pretty. I just, you know, yeah, she's pretty. She's Indian.
So who would you say is number 1? Because I gave you my top 3.
Right, on this page, well, let's see, there's 3 African-based women. There's 4 African, she's mixed. And there are 2 Indian women. Number 1, let's say okay, so I have to do Indian. Okay, you're doing, okay, we were supposed to do black, you're doing black, and then I'm doing Indian. But that's good that you got, I'll play this part of the game with you. Okay, so I'll do this one too. I'll do it the same way you did it. I'll do top 3. Number 1, I'm probably gonna go with, it's gonna be a toss-up between 4 and 6 for me. 6 is very pretty, and I like the skin. I'll just go with 4. I'll do number 6 as 2, and then 3. I'm gonna give number 3 to number 2. I like number 2, Orange. She's pretty. She's pretty.
Well, and see, maybe this is part of the ingrown colorism or whatever, because I would put number 6 at the least attractive on that page, to me.
Oh, Lisa. Oh, because she's darker.
Not even. I just don't find her as beautiful.
Oh, okay, you don't find her as pretty?
Yeah.
I think she's pretty. I think she's gorgeous.
I think she's really pretty, but I think the other women on that page are more beautiful.
Much more pretty. Yeah, so there's differences, you know, and to each his own. All right, let's do this. So we have, let's take a look at this. All right, so we're going to go to this next slide. We've got 7 through 12 on here. We'll put this up on the screen. You guys can look at this as well.
These are little girls, so it's...
Oh, yeah, we're going to take out 10 and 11. All right, yeah, obviously 10 and 11. Well, let's do this. Let's do this. Okay, so these aren't necessarily. We need African women. All right, let's do this. Let's pick. Who do you think? I'll put the image up on the screen later.
Okay.
Who do you think is the most? What's your prettiest black woman that you can name, that African American, that you think is the prettiest, gorgeous, that everyone would know?
That actress from Colombiana.
Colombiana. What's her name?
I don't know.
Colombiana. All right, let's look her up real quick. All right, for me, I'm gonna go with Simone Ashley. I love Simone Ashley.
But she's not... oh, okay.
Yeah, Simone Ashley is Indian. Colombiana. Is that a movie?
Yeah, it's an old movie. Let me see.
Oh. Is that Zoe? 1992. Amanda Sternberg? Oh, here she is. Zoe Saldana?
Yeah.
Oh, you like Zoe Saldana?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Zoe Saldana is, you guys know what that is. I'll put this exact image up on screen. She's well, I'll put this one. She's mixed. She's probably 50-50, but you know, you can see the African blood. For me, it's going to be Simone Ashley. So those, and the only reason why it's Simone Ashley is because she's the most prominent Indian woman that I see in the media right now. So, in terms of everyone else, I don't know the rest, but I do know there are a bunch of beautiful Indian women. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to close out this segment. I think we're actually done. We don't have a top 10. Oh, we have Daily Stupid.
We also, I mean, I don't know if you want to, but we can talk
Let's do it on live.
Yeah, we can do the live, but we can also talk about these people who are fake, or you want to say that for the live?
Let's get into the live, yeah.
Okay.
Guys, when we get into the live, we're going to do a live this Sunday. We're going to do a live Sunday. So you guys will see us pop up on the live. We'll put this in here. We'll put it in the title. We'll put it in the description. So we'll talk about it on the live. We're gonna move into our Daily Stupid. Guys, we'll be right back with our Daily Stupid.
How dare you!
Well, we're back for the Daily Stupid.
All right, guys, Daily Stupid. This is your favorite part of the show. All right, you want to go first, or?
Well, you have.
I have two this time.
So you go with one, I'll go with one, and you finish it up.
Okay, let's do this. The first one, it's going to be there's a story on OceanGate. You guys remember OceanGate? OceanGate's the company that had the submersible, the Titan. Okay.
Stockton Rush.
Yeah, Stockton Rush. Mr. Am I mentally ill or what? Definitely mentally ill. But the company that owns OceanGate stated that they want to create a colony out in space, like near Venus or something, or around Venus. And I'm like, you guys failed at putting a submersible at a few thousand feet, but then you want to send people potentially, I don't even know how many miles it is, what, millions of miles? Couple 100,000 miles.
They couldn't deal with what was going on this planet.
But we're going to succeed putting so we had, what? How many people were in the Titan? Less than 10.
Five people.
5 people in the Titan that blew apart. Yet we're supposed to trust, 1,000 people are supposed to trust their lives with you who used carbon fiber. They're supposed to trust their lives with you to be in space, living on a long-term basis. But you couldn't send someone down for a couple of hours? Make that make sense. Daily Stupid for you.
So
all right, what you got?
For my Daily Stupid, I actually have one of my heroes, and that is Clarence Thomas.
Clarence Thomas.
So Clarence Thomas has got himself into a world of problems over the last 6 or 8 months. Is justifiably, people from Congress and have been looking into what he's been spending his money on and how he's been funding his extravagant vacations.
The financials? They've been digging through his financials.
And what they found is, most recently, that in 1998 or 1999 or something like that, he bought a $270,000 RV, which according to websites is a passion of his.
Say it ain't so.
And it was funded by one of his wealthy executive friends. And, you know, there has to be a way of having checks and balances even on the Supreme Court, because it's ridiculous that a Supreme Court justice would be able to accept that type of a gift. Just yesterday, you had Imran Khan, the former Prime Minister of Pakistan, who went to jail for selling gifts that were given to him as the Prime Minister for corruption.
He was the Prime Minister for corruption?
No, he was the Prime Minister of the country.
Oh, the country, okay.
Basically, when you're a head of state, people or other nations will give you gifts.
Corruption.
So then he was then selling those things. I mean, you know, I guess it's kind of like the big guy signing off as well. But with Clarence Thomas, you have the Supreme Court. And this goes to whether or not Supreme Court justices can accept gifts from other people. And I would say, well, absolutely not, because
they influence cases.
Yeah, they influence cases. And it's a really bad precedent. And I think that there needs to be a way of maybe getting rid of him and finding someone else.
I agree, because he may be compromised. Yeah. I mean,
well, I think
if anything, he's compromised his morals.
I think everyone is compromised in some way, but when there has to be a system to get rid of Supreme Court justices, because traditionally it's been until you retire or die.
Right.
But when you discover something like this about one of the 9 most important judicial people in the country, you got to get rid of them.
Yeah, I agree. I think anytime you bend the knee to corruption like that, I think it's time for you to go. Because if you're willing to do that, I mean, come on.
Well,
This guy didn't just buy him that and that was the end. We know something happened as a result. There has to be.
And Clarence Thomas is brilliant. He knew what he was doing. I mean, that's just a bad idea.
It's a bad idea. I mean,
I think sold out.
What did he get in response to that? Because
we won't know.
Big deals. There's always quid pro quo.
Yep.
There might have been some legal case. There might have been something he ruled on that made this guy a ton of money.
Mm-hmm. We don't know.
And we don't know. And that's the problem. That's why you don't accept gifts. That's why we can't accept gifts. That's bribery. Mm-hmm. It's essentially bribery. Who knows what Clarence Thomas would have done had this $270,000 RV not been given him. All right, second Daily Stupid. Guys, you see what's happening with Lizzo. Lizzo's being sued. Lizzo's being sued by a couple of backup dancers who are also extremely body positive, extremely healthy.
Lizzo the hippo?
Lizzo is being sued big time. So guess what? So what happened was the dancers are saying that Lizzo, one dancer in particular, said that Lizzo and I guess the managers of the tour were saying that, oh, what's going on? It looks like you look different. They were trying to, in a sort of roundabout way, tell her she was getting big. Mm-hmm. And the dancer was like, well, I know I'm getting bigger, but she said they were really strongly alluding to the fact that her body had changed and they wanted to know if everything was okay. And she said that she felt uncomfortable and, XYZ. So, yeah, Lizzo is guilty of body shaming, and that's her whole brand.
She was body shaming him for putting on weight.
Putting on weight.
There was also the sexual harassment or assault.
There was that too.
I mean,
it was like sexual. They were being pressured. So it was like, when you have a person who's in power trying to pressure you to do sexual things, whether it's you and someone else or you and them, that's a no-go. But for my Daily Stupid, it's not about the sexual part. To be honest, I could, I'm not going to be honest. But to me, it's about the hypocrisy of you being what's Lizzo, 5'11", 300 pounds? I mean, we're talking about like a linebacker.
Maybe 385 pounds?
Not that big, but she's big enough. She's big. She's a big woman. And she's really tall. To be that tall, that big, and, to be body shaming anyone? How are you going to body shame? Look at you. Yeah. Anyway, I just thought that was extra stupid. But that brings to an end our Daily Stupid. Any further comments on that?
No.
All right, guys. That's our Daily Stupid. Thank you for joining us in this pretty special episode. Let me go back to my T-shirt here. Unity.
That's what we need.
That's what we need. That's what we need. We're talking about Indian, East Indian, and African American or Black American constructs when it comes to race, color, etc. We hope you enjoyed the episode. Please drop us a like. We definitely need subscribers. Definitely subscribe. That helps out with the end. Definitely share. If you found anything interesting in this, definitely share. We have a lot more topics, and we're going to revisit this topic in another way later on. And we're going to bring on a guest. The goal is to bring on a guest, and we're going to talk about it with a guest. And we have more games. Anyway, that is a wrap. You guys have a great one. We look forward to hearing from you in the comments. Like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell, and as always, we will see you in the next one.